it's not about next season for the Kings because we all know the team right now is a mess. Scott Perry took over a mess from the previous regime. And how do they balance the veteran core that they have with also development in the young talent? Like, the best case scenario for the Kings, you make a playoff push. In a tough Western Conference, in my opinion, unlikely, Keegan Murray, he makes a leap towards becoming a two-way star. We saw what Keegan Murray did in his rookie year, the most threes by a rookie. We know what he's really took the leaps as a defensive player these last couple of years. Can Keegan Murray get back to his rookie year shooting the basketball? And if you can move Keegan Murray to, in my opinion, to his natural fit at the three, so that's one thing to look at. Doug Christie, who's now the permanent head coach here in Sacramento. Can he establish a clear defensive identity while also maintaining the Kings' offensive flow? The Kings have been bad defensively for a long time. And the one common theme this entire offseason that we've heard from, if it's Doug Christie, Scott Perry, this is going to be a defensive-oriented team with the toughness, the versatility, size. The alternate scenario for Sacramento this season is getting a high draft pick. Because with all indications, the 2026 NBA draft is absolutely loaded. And if the Kings get hit with injuries and this roster doesn't mesh like we saw at the tail end of this past season, Zach LaVine, the DeRozan experience is underwhelming like we saw this past season. Malik Monk, not here because you traded him in a possible sign and trade. If Keegan Murray doesn't take that leap as an offensive player and you still struggle defensively, persist despite Doug Christie's schemes, they could pivot midway through this upcoming season at the deadline, moving players like DeRozan, Schroeder, and maybe for future picks and young talent to get a high draft pick, in my opinion, which will be the best case. This would be the best case scenario because you got 2 years left of DeRozan, 2 years of Zach LaVine, I believe, and this outcome, the Kings would finish around the 10th or the 11th in the Western Conference. You sell off your pieces at the trade deadline. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of our Kings-related podcast, wherever you may be. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up, a subscribe, and leave a comment down below. We're also available on audio form wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all those different platforms. We are available. In today's episode, we're going to look at the best case scenario for the Sacramento Kings this upcoming season. And is it really a gap year for Sacramento? As next season, it's not about next season for the Kings because we all know the team right now is a mess. Scott Perry took over a mess from the previous regime. And how do they balance the veteran core that they have with also development in the young talent? Like, the best case scenario for the Kings, you make a playoff push. In a tough Western Conference, in my opinion, unlikely. And that's Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. That's them staying healthy, and they can form a reliable scoring duo around Sabonis. But we saw that duo in Chicago. It did not work in Chicago with the Bulls. I know LaVine came over post the deadline, and it did not work in the second half of the season post the deadline. Keegan Murray, he makes a leap towards becoming a two-way star. We saw what Keegan Murray did in his rookie year, the most threes by a rookie. We know what he's really took the lead as a defensive player these last couple of years. Can Keegan Murray get back to his rookie year shooting the basketball? And if you can move Keegan Murray to, in my opinion, to his natural fit at the three, and if the Sacramento does end up acquiring Jonathan Kuminga in a sign and trade, you have Dennis Schroeder playing your point guard, Levine at the 2 guard, Keegan Murray at the 3, Kuminga at the 4, Sabonis at the 5. I like the fit with Keegan and Kuminga because Kuminga is a switchable player. He can play the 3, he can play the 4. He's a really good on-ball defender if the Kings do get him. But where does that leave DeMar DeRozan? Are you going to ask a veteran who's his playing career coming to the end? He's toward the back half. He really wants to win and play for a championship team. Sacramento's nowhere close to that. Do you move DeRozan in a separate deal to another team instead of having him come off the bench? So that's one thing to look at. Doug Christie, who's now the permanent head coach here in Sacramento. Can he establish a clear defensive identity while also maintaining the Kings' offensive flow? The Kings have been bad defensively for a long time. And the one common thing this entire offseason that we've heard from, if it's Doug Christie, Scott Perry, this is going to be a defensive-oriented team with the toughness, the versatility, size. I think the Kings really have upgraded. They got more size. They need more size as well, more wing help. I believe they are shifting towards a defensive-first identity, which is much needed for a Sacramento franchise that has been bad defensively for a long time, but also maintain that offensive flow. You got Schroeder, who's a good defender, not quite the offensive player like what you had at Fox. If you lose Malik Monk in a Kuminga sign and trade, that's a lot of offense. We know what Zach LaVine does offensively. He's not a defensive guy. If you still have DeRozan's a good mid-range, clutch player there at the end of games. Sabonis, the hub of the offense with the DHO, and if he can incorporate more three-point shooting into his game. He did take a lot of threes this past season, but he was around the 40% mark this past season. So maintaining that offensive flow if you're Sacramento. If you look at the bench depth for Sacramento, Malik Monk, if he's still here, that's a big if. Drew Eubanks, who you signed after he was waived by the Clippers, he should not play more than 10 minutes a game as a backup. I really want to see Maxime Reynaud as the backup as if we go late into the season, like post deadline for the second half. Dario Saric, who knows how much he will play because he's somebody he's better movement than JV. He can stretch the floor, versatile, but who knows how much time he will play. You got Doug McDermott. Why they re-signed him, I have no idea, but he's somebody who can stretch the floor, knows how to play with Sabonis. And can that second unit and the bench depth of this team, can it be consistent enough? Because if you lose Malik Monk, your bench takes a huge hit offensively. If you do lose Malik Monk, the outcome of the best case scenario of Zach DeRozan staying healthy, Keegan making that leap towards a two-way star that we hope he can be. The best case scenario for that, the Kings land around the 5th or 6th seed, avoiding that play-in and finally winning a playoff series for the first time since 2004. That path would validate GM Scott Perry's veteran-heavy offseason approach this season and solidify the Kings as a legit playoff mainstay. I do not see that happening as the Kings making the playoffs, because as constructed right now, I do not see the Kings making a playoff push because I don't think they are good enough. I think there are several teams that are better for them. The alternate scenario for Sacramento this season is getting a high draft pick, because with all indications, the 2026 NBA draft is absolutely loaded. And if the Kings get hit with injuries and this roster doesn't mesh, like we saw at the tail end of this past season, Zach LaVine, the DeRozan experience is underwhelming like we saw this past season. Malik Monk not here because you traded him in a possible sign and trade. If Keegan Murray doesn't take that leap as an offensive player and you still struggle defensively, persist despite Doug Christie's schemes, they could pivot midway through this upcoming season at the deadline, moving players like DeRozan, Schroeder, and maybe for future picks and young talent to get a high draft pick, in my opinion, which will be the best case. That this would be the best case scenario, because you got 2 years left of DeRozan, 2 years of Zach LaVine, I believe, and this outcome, the Kings would finish around the 10th or the 11th in the Western Conference. You sell off your pieces at the trade deadline, and you land in the 8 to 10 draft range with a shot at adding a long-term wing or big lot the time to be in the rotation of Doug Christie this upcoming season, the way he played in Vegas this summer. And if you look at if you're going off the win now for Sacramento, you could see 48 to 50 wins, a playoff series victory. Keegan Murray ascends, and they enter next summer's free agency as an attractive destination for free agency. And Sacramento's never been an attractive place for free agents to come. You've always had to overpay to land free agents, or you can hit the reset button. You trade your vets at the deadline. You pivot around Sabonis, Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray's the face of this franchise going forward. I think you build around, I said this earlier in the offseason, you build this team around Keegan Murray, Sabonis, and Keon Ellis. The three guys I would absolutely build this team around. You grab a lottery pick and a strong NBA draft class. And either way, the Kings season, it hinges on Keegan Murray's growth as an offensive player. Again, we saw what he could do in his rookie year. And since then, we've seen the dips offensively. And I think a lot of it had to do by taking a lot on defensively, becoming that guy as a two-way player. And how does Zach LaVine fit in with this team? And if both hit, it's playoffs. But if not, a retool for Sacramento would be the more valuable way than going for another play-in spot and potentially an exit. The best way is you go into this season, you win early. But if you look at the Western Conference, Oklahoma City, they're not going anywhere. The Houston Rockets, they got a hell of a lot better this summer. Adding Kevin Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith. They just locked up Jabari Smith Jr. They're not going anywhere for foreseeable future. The Denver Nuggets, in my opinion, I think they got better than they were than we saw them in the Western Conference Finals. The Nuggets are better. You know, you got the Lakers, LeBron, Luka, and then you got the Clippers. I think the Clippers are a lot better than we saw them in the playoffs. And then you got teams like San Antonio, a full season with Fox and Wembanyama. The Portland Trailblazers are on the climb. You got Damian Lillard, who's going to rehab with Portland, probably miss most of the season. That team is on the climb, on the ups. That's a better team than Sacramento. Who knows about Golden State? Golden State's got a bunch of old guys they're not a championship team. But the Kings, And you got the Dallas Mavericks, who I believe are going to be better this upcoming season. They went through a lot of shit this past season when they made the blockbuster trade. They got the number one pick, Cooper Flag. The Mavericks should be better this upcoming season. The Western Conference as a whole, it's not getting weak, it's getting better. And the Kings are a team that's been, the last couple of years, have been a team stuck in the middle. And this is the fault of the previous regime after that playoff series against Golden State, which the Kings should have won, but who's holding? I'm still upset about that. Since that playoff series, the previous regime, front office, what did they do after that playoff series? They did nothing. The Monty McNair era as the GM of the Sacramento Kings can be summed up as a run-it-back era. That's what Monty did as tenure as the GM of the Sacramento Kings. He ran it back every single year, not improving this team, not getting the length and the size that this team desperately needed since that playoff series. And look, you got length and size this offseason with Clifford. You got Maxime Renaud, who can stretch the floor, a big who can stretch the floor and shoot. So the best case scenario for the Kings for this upcoming season, injury-free, if everything clicks, you could win possibly 48 to 50 wins. What happens? Zach LaVine fits seamlessly as a secondary scorer on this team, taking pressure off Sabonis, Malik Monk, if he's here, if the Kings do make that sign and trade with Golden State. DeMar DeRozan, if he's here, you take the pressure off him. Keegan Murray jumps near all-star level, an elite. He can become an elite 3-and-D player. He scores 18 to 20 points a game. Doug Christie's defensive schemes elevate them to a league average defense, maybe middle of the pack in the defensive ranks in the league. And the bench depth can keep them steady in tough stretches. Doug McDermott, who knows if he'll play at all. Drew Eubanks, if he the minutes. Nick Clifford, Maxime Renaud. And that outcome, you could win a first-round playoff series, maybe push a second-round team to 6 or 7 games. The realistic scenario and maybe likely outcome, 42, 45 wins, a play-in to a 6-7 seed range. Zach LaVine's health is spotty because that's over the last few years, he's had trouble staying healthy. Malik Monk continues his 6th Man of the Year play. Keegan Murray improves, but he's still more of a high-level role player than a superstar. The defense is still bottom 10 in the league, forcing the Kings into short outs. And Sacramento, they hover around 500 for most of the season, but finish strong with a late push. And that outcome, you can have a play-in win and a first-round exit like we saw a couple seasons ago, similar to that 7-game series against Golden State. The other most likely scenario for the Kings for this upcoming season, you can have 34 to 38 wins, around the 10th or the 12th seed in that draft lottery range. Zach LaVine, injuries. The age shows the DeRozan with the age-related decline. The defense absolutely collapses on par for the Sacramento Kings without any rim protection despite the efforts of head coach Doug Christie. The bench is inconsistent. You got Malik Monk with all the rumors that's been out there this past summer with him being dangled in the signing trade with Kuminga. And the Sacramento Kings could pivot at the trade deadline, trading guys like DeRozan and Schroeder for picks and expiring deals. And you miss the play-in entirely, and you end up in the lottery in a loaded 2026 draft class, signaling a retool. Because I'll be honest, I'm really not looking forward to this upcoming season. I think this year is absolutely going to be a gap year. I think once you've seen Scott Perry, Doug Christie put their fingertips and trying to build an identity with this team. Because Scott Perry took over a mess with this roster and the contract with Levine, DeRozan, Sabonis from the previous regime that was here, and the X factors for the Sacramento Kings for this upcoming season. You got Keegan Murray taking that leap to be the star that we think he can be. Zach LaVine, can he stay healthy for a full 82 games and maybe push to be in that play-in? Doug Christie, his first full season as the head coach, can he install a defensive system that can stabilize this Kings team, but also maintaining that offensive flow with this team? And the trade deadline, I believe the Kings are going to be very active this upcoming season when we get to the trade deadline. And you move. Can you add more wins if you don't do that with the rest of this offseason before we hit the training camp? Adding another defender or moving vets until this upcoming season, either way, towards getting to a lottery situation for the Sacramento Kings, because the West is absolutely brutal. If the Kings were in the Eastern Conference, they could probably make a run for the top 6 because the East is more wide open than the West. It's absolutely loaded. So the best to answer the question, the 2025-26 season is 100% gap year for the Sacramento Kings to identify the identity that Scott Perry and Doug Christie are trying to build with this team. That means I want to see more Clifford get more minutes as we turn the calendar to 2026. Maxime Renaud should get more minutes when the calendar flips to 26. Isaac Jones, I want to see a lot of Isaac Jones. These young players, Devin Carter, if he's still on this team. And can you forge identity of being tough, defensive-minded, but not losing that offensive flow of the Kings offense this upcoming season? So, for the Sacramento Kings, we know they're in a tough spot, Scott Perry is, with the contracts. Because you got 2 years left with DeRozan. You're still on Zach LaVine. We know that pairing does not work. I actually think Zach LaVine will actually be better. The Kings are far worse if they trade DeRozan. And that's all dependent on if they make this sign and trade deal with Golden State for Jonathan Kuminga. Because if you move DeRozan, you are not better. You are worse. And as a fan of the Sacramento Kings, I think being worse this upcoming season will be better for the long-term future of the Sacramento Kings. Just to get your young players the development and the improvement for this upcoming season. So let me know in the comments down below if you're watching on YouTube. Do you believe that this upcoming season is a gap year? Let me know in the comments down below. And what do you want to see from a development standpoint from the Kings for this upcoming season? Thanks for tuning in to this episode of our Kings-related podcast. Be sure to hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. And if you're listening on your preferred audio platform, hit that follow button, rate 5 stars, leave a nice little review, it'd be much appreciated. And we'll catch you next time on another edition of our Kings-related podcast. Take care, and as always, go Kings.